Are the Niners going to get their doors blown off by the Rams on Sunday here at Levi's, or are they going to find a way to pull the upset and Kyle Shanahan's going to, take another bite out of that coach of the year apple that he's looks like he's destined to eat?
Look, I'm a little bit worried about this game, but anytime you do have Kyle Shanahan coaching the offense, Robert Saleh coaching the defense, you will have a shot. And that's really why I wanted San Francisco to make a move at the NFL trade deadline, because I wasn't asking for the Niners to make a move for a superstar type of player, but they needed a body at the defensive end spot because they were so thin there, especially after the Michael Williams injury. And by not making a move, now Keon White is a little bit banged up. You have no idea what your pass rush is going to look like. And it comes down to bodies at this point. Do the Niners even have enough bullets in the chamber to last with a team like the Los Angeles Rams? And while the Niners can go out there on Sunday at home, be competitive, pull off the upset, you think back to that game in week 5 and you think about all of the crazy things that ensued, all the crazy things that happened, and how improbable of a victory that was. A lot of things had to go right in order for San Francisco to win that game as 8.5-point underdogs, short week on the road with a rash of injuries, right? Mac Jones dropped back nearly 50 times in that game. He threw 49 passes, and he had one of the best games of his career. Kendrick Bourne had a career game. Eddie Pinheiro was brilliant in that game. He had a career-long field goal, and he was money. You had a little bit of luck. His field goal in overtime grazed off that left upright. It went in. You had the Alfred Collins peanut punch along the goal line. Otherwise, Kyron Williams scores a touchdown there. That could have been the ball game. And then in overtime, you had the 4th-and-1 stop, a great team collective hustle effort by this Niners defense. And that was another big play in the game. So you think back to that game, and there was so much that happened. Yes, you had Fred Warner. Now you don't. But you didn't have George Kittle then. Now you do. I just think that San Francisco is going to have to once again play a near-perfect game against one of the top teams in the NFL, a team that's really hot. Since that Niners loss in week 5, they won 3 games in a row. They've been humming on both sides of the ball. And from a matchup standpoint, if you can't generate a pass rush in this game, you're in big, big trouble. Matthew Stafford is in the thick of the MVP conversation. He has, 21 touchdowns throwing and 2 interceptions this year. He's been great. Puka Nacua banged up. He's been highly productive. Devontae Adams, 8 touchdowns, nearly 500 yards this year. They have a good offensive line. They have a really sound running game with Kyron Williams. And so you lack a pass rush. That aids the Rams because Matthew Stafford can sling it. Sean McVay calling the offense. They have so many weapons there. On your offense, you have a porous offensive line that against elite defenses really struggles, especially top-notch defensive lines. What do the Rams have? A top-notch defensive line. Jared Verse is one of the best overall players in football. Byron Young is having a phenomenal season this year. He has 9 sacks on the year. And so I kind of like how the Rams defense matches up with the 49ers offense. So if the Niners don't play perfect, and if the ball doesn't bounce their way, and if they go out there and they play like they did against Jacksonville back in week 4, like they did against the Ravens a couple of Christmases ago, and they turn it over and momentum isn't on their side and the defense is on the field for a long time, then the offense can't do anything, like the Houston game. This could get out of hand early. I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm hoping that the Niners can keep it close, but we're going to find out what type of game this is, I think, early in the first quarter by the flow and by the complexion of it, Larry.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams can win all kinds of ways. The Rams can win leading. The Rams can win coming from behind. The Rams can win any number of ways. The Rams can win in a game where they run the ball. The Rams can win in a game where they throw the ball. The Rams can win in a game where they don't score a lot of points. The Rams can win in a game where they score lots of points. Why do I feel that way? Well, just, you look at the 49ers. I think the 49ers can only win if the Niners defense can't stop this Rams offense. The only thing that the Niners can do in this game to have a chance, they have a puncher's chance, and that is if the Niners offense and defense work together to beat the Rams offense. That's the only way the Niners are going to have a chance. What I mean by that is the Niners have to play complementary football. The Niners have to dominate the time of possession. I'll say this. I don't think the 49ers are going to win any games the rest of the year against anybody where they get the time of possession dominated against them. If they don't dominate time of possession or at least hold their own, they're going to get their doors blown off. Their defense can't stand up to, oh my God, your defense was out there the whole game. Your defense can't stand up even for half the game. They need their offense to protect their defense. They got to play ball control. They got to play keep away. They got to think first downs. They got to dominate the time of possessions. It's got to be a 75 play to 45 play end of the game. It's got to be a Niners hold the ball for 38 minutes and change. It's got to be that kind of a performance. And the 49ers are also going to have to battle them even on the turnover margin. If those things happen, if the Niners are even or better on the turnover margin, if the Niners can possess the ball for 38 minutes, then they got a shot. If they can play complementary football, play keep away from Stafford, limit the possessions, because let's be honest. I mean, I've looked at this thing a million ways. The 49ers are going to come out. They're going to play a bunch of zones. You know, they're gonna mix in their zones. They'll have their keys and their things that they're looking for in the zone, but they're basically going to play a zone defense, and they don't have a lot of rush up front. Stafford is awesome. He's got all kinds of weapons. He's got a laser fast release. He's got a rocket for an arm. He can go down the field. He can do anything he wants, basically. So they're going to have to speed him up somehow, some way. Now, but I think that's it right there. If the Niners can win the time of possession, dominate an offense, limit the possessions, possibly get a turnover or two, they can possibly nip them at the wire in a close one. Otherwise, it's Rams big in this game. That's how I see it.
The issue with the 49ers, with all of the injuries that they've had this year, and because they lack juice at some really important spots, especially in the trenches, is that it's gotten to a point where the margin for error for the Niners is razor thin. And so the things that I mentioned, the things that you mentioned about what the Niners have to do as far as the pace, the flow, the look of the game, that's what the Niners have to do to beat quality opponents. And another thing, too, we've seen against Atlanta, we saw against the Giants. In each of those games, the Niners finally had success in running the football. They got to 39 carries in both of those games. Well, with an average offensive line, when you go up against some of these top-notch elite defenses, they're unable to run the ball. That's been a problem all year long. But when they do go up against teams that are susceptible against the run, that's when they find some success. And that, to your point, Larry, allows them to win time of possession, to keep that Rams offense on the sideline. What was a huge key? Thinking back to that week 5 game, in the first quarter, the Rams barely had the ball because the Niners were able to go on elongated drive, eat up a lot of clock, convert on a lot of third downs in that first half. In general, I'd really liked how Kyle Shanahan was aggressive in that game. You think back to that Giants game, first drive of the ball game, that defense was paper mache. Jackson Dart and the Giants went right down the field. The Niners knew from the previous week, that awful loss to Houston, when the defense gave up long drives and the offense couldn't sustain drives, that they couldn't give up an opening drive touchdown against New York, have a short drive for the offense after the defense gave up that long scoring drive. So what did Kyle Shanahan do? He was aggressive. He went for it on a 4th and 1 from the Niners' own territory to keep that drive going, knowing he needed to give his shorthanded defense a rest, and the Niners marched right down the field, went on that long drive, ate up a lot of clock, and scored a touchdown. And so that's also a thought process for Shanahan here. You got to be aggressive, I think, early in the game as well, to kind of set the tone and send a message, but to also possess the football, to keep that Rams offense on the sideline, to give your defense, which again, dealing with a lot of injuries, doesn't have a pass rush, refreshed throughout this game too.
Yeah, I mean, let's get right down into the nitty-gritty. On first and second down, the 49ers have to get yards. They can't have negative yardage plays.
Can't play behind the sticks.
Can't have penalties. Shanahan, I asked Shanahan what he thought of this defense, and I was asking him about the run defense, and then he started talking about their defense overall, and he said they have not given up a 3rd and 12 or better all season, not one. He's like, it's week 10. I mean, that's unbelievable through 9 weeks of football. So you're this, and I asked Kubiak about it. He's like, "Yeah, man, if you get to third and long against this defense, they're death. They'll turn you over. Their coverage is sound. There's nowhere to go with the ball. They rush the quarterback. They use Quentin Lake and a bunch of dime coverages. I mean, it's a really interesting defense if you fall into third and long. So run the ball. I mean, the Niners in that first game ran 33 times and they ran for 2.2 a carry. Do you think they'll do the same thing, Chase? I mean, if they can't run, do you think they'll do the same thing where they're just like, I asked Kubiak, I mean, is this going to be head knocker bowl number 2? And he's like, it could be, it could be that kind of a game, because I feel like when you look at how good the Rams are on third and long as a defense, the Niners can't take chances on first and second down or any kind of wild plays trying to go for big yardage. They got to get to third and manageable every time, or Jones could get knocked out and they're going to be punting. So do you think it's going to be another game? Do you think the Niners are going to still struggle to run it? Or do you think with Kittle back, they'll be more efficient running it than they were in the first game?
They've definitely been a little bit more efficient since Kittle came back and running the football. Now, against Houston, they were down big so early that they were kind of forced into a spot where they had to throw it a lot, and Mac Jones had to drop back and air it out. And that didn't do him any favors in the pass game because the Niners offensive line couldn't hold up against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. But it is a great point that you make that if you play behind the sticks in this game, you're screwed, which is why the rushing efficiency on some of these early downs to get into third and manageables, third and mediums is going to be vital in this game. And I don't think it's a knock on Mac Jones that Kyle wants to run it. I just think that this offense is so much better and operates so much more better when you're able to find success in running the football, because it becomes so more balanced and then so much more balanced. And then the play action is able to work off of that. And the offense becomes more difficult to defend when you're able to find success in running the football. But we've also seen that when the Niners can take a lead in a game under Kyle Shanahan, when they can dictate the pace and the flow of the game, it's usually when they're running the ball, playing their style, downhill and physical. There's so much of a different and a better offense. And so I think Shanahan's going to try to run it. Unfortunately, when the Niners have gone up against really good defenses, and this is a good Rams rushing defense, they just haven't been able to fare well in running the ball all year, because their interior offensive line isn't that good. And I don't think they're going to get that much better at the center spot going with Jake Brendel over Matt Hennessy. I'd like to see more Hennessy there at center.
Yeah, it sounds like Brendel's coming back. I'm like, when Shanahan announced that yesterday, I'm like, that sounds like a threat more than anything. Hennessy's played really well. Brendel doesn't even look good in practice. I mean, they just love Brendel. It's crazy. If there's greatness there, man, it's masking itself behind a lot of mediocrity. The Niners, I'm not loving the fact that the Niners didn't do anything at the trade deadline. And I really don't like being told that, I can't be disappointed. It's like, if you're disappointed, you're an idiot. And it's like, no, I'm not an idiot. I just know that they're not good enough and they don't have a good enough pass rush. And then it's like, I get a lot of people in my chats, Krug, I don't want to trade a first-round pick for a rental. I didn't say do that. Krug, I don't want to trade all of our draft picks next year for a guy who's no good. I didn't say to do that. So all I wanted to see them do was trade a draft pick in one of the next 2 drafts for somebody that they could put in their rotation who could actually lead the rotation. I was thinking like a Michael Clemens from the Jets, or I would have loved to see them just continue to build and maybe use, a day 2 pick on, a piece, a Tavondre Sweat, a Jackson Powers Johnson, a Brian Thomas Jr., somebody who would be in that category of you're still building. That's the approach I wanted to see them take. I didn't need to see them go for like a go for it trade this year, but they obviously need help up front. I don't know if they're going to be able to get any off anybody's practice squad or if they're even going to get that creative. I watch practice every day. I mean, they are pleading with Robert Beal. It's like, Rob, come on, Rob. I mean, it's unbelievable. They drafted this guy out of Florida State. He's 6'4", he's 260. He runs in the 4.4s. He has absolutely no instincts for the position and has never demonstrated any. There's a reason that Kirby never played this guy. And did the Niners figure that out? No. They keep sitting there just feeding into Robert Beal. It's like, dude, how much longer are you going to go with this failed experiment trying to justify this draft choice and not get down the road? There's got to be 5 or 6 real defensive ends on practice squads all over this freaking league that are worlds better than Robert Beal, but they won't do it. They just keep Robert Beal. I've got to watch it at practices. They're pleading with him. Rob, do this. There's so much junk in his pass rush, all this shimmy, all these moves, all this crap. And he just needs to streamline and go hunt quarterbacks, and he just can't do it. And it's brought me a lot of frustration, but I'm more frustrated, not that they didn't do anything. I'm more frustrated at these idiots who are just like, you guys don't have a right to be disappointed. Really? They're 6-3. There's only like 3 teams in football that have a better record. The entire freaking league is wide open, and you desperately needed help, and you didn't get any. And it's like, you're now going to point the finger at the people that actually had passion and wanted you to get better. And then I love the Mike Silver report where he's like, hey, man, people inside the Niner building were really frustrated, and there's frustrations mounting that they didn't do anything. So I don't know. I get the sense that there's different factions in this organization that want different agendas, different things. I don't know what's going on, but they needed help and they didn't get it. It's as simple as that. We can debate the rest of this about keeping picks, this and that. They have missed on 18 picks in the first 3 rounds in the last 9 drafts. That's an average of 2 per year in 3 rounds. They're going 1 for 3 on average in the first 3 rounds of the draft every year they've run this team. So sorry if I'm not like thrilled that they preserved their draft capital when they haven't done a lot with it at times. That's where I'm at. Give me your perspective. I know you cover the Niners, you cover the Eagles. You're not just so Niner-centric that you just can't see the forest through the trees. What was your viewpoint of this trade deadline from their perspective? How would you evaluate what they did in Keon White and Cleveland Farrell and what they didn't do basically on trade deadline day?
Well, I think a big reason why a lot of viewers gravitate to the 49ers report and the Krug show is because you and I, among very few who cover the Niners, have an ability to think critically, and we're not delusional. We know that the Niners have not won a Super Bowl since 1994, and while they are a well-run organization and they've done a lot of good, they haven't won the big game. And that 6th Super Bowl, it continues to escape them. And so if the Niners had come out of that Giants game, Larry, with Mykel Williams healthy and they didn't make a move, I would say, okay, I see what they're doing here. They made the trade for Keon White. They added Cleveland Farrell. Keon White against the Giants, especially rushing from defensive tackle, was very disruptive. Cleveland Farrell had a really good hustle sack of Jackson Dart. Keon White is really a player that Robert Saleh and Chris Kocurek like because of the size, versatility, and the power in this wide 9 and the ability to impact the game from a couple of different positions. Cleveland Farrell back in 2023 had one of the best years of his career. He started every game for the Niners that year, and they made it to the Super Bowl, and he had 3.5 sacks, and he too has positional versatility. And so if Mykel Williams was healthy and you looked at the edge rusher rotation as Mykel, Bryce Huff, once he comes back against the Rams, Keon White, Cleveland Farrell, Sam Okuwanu, Robert Beal, I would say that's a pass rush that I think Robert Saleh can make work. Here's the problem. Mykel Williams tore his ACL. Your 2 starting defensive ends from week 1 are now out for the season. And you are once again 1 injury away from being in a spot where you are desperate, where you're scrambling around just to field a defensive line that can get through a game. You are 6-3. You are not a 2 and 7 ball club. You are in the mix at 6-3. You are 3-0 in your division. Guess who the number 1 seed in the NFC is? The Philadelphia Eagles. Guess how many wins they have? The same amount of wins as the San Francisco 49ers. Did people think that in 2021, when the Niners started 3-5 with Jimmy Garoppolo, they were going to make it to the NFC Championship game, and they should have made it to the Super Bowl? And in Week 17, they had that heroic win, the final week of the season against the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think a lot of people thought the Niners were NFC Championship game bound. Now they have a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo in Mac Jones and, of course, Brock Purdy. When the Niners started 4-4 in 2023, did people think that the Niners were going to be NFC Championship game bound in 2022? And they started 500. They made the trade for Christian McCaffrey. A lot of people, when the Niners started 4-4, were saying season's over. Once again, they're not going to fulfill expectations. Kyle Shanahan should be on the hot seat. You know what move they made that year to inject some life into the ball club? They traded for Christian McCaffrey. Then they went on a tear. Part of the reason why making a trade can be so impactful at the deadline is the juice and the belief it gives the locker room, which is why I think Mike Silver had that report that a lot of people are frustrated within the Niners organization, that they didn't make a move because everybody knows this defense is simply not good enough to make a run in the playoffs. They might make it to the postseason. They might win a playoff game, but it's going to have to be a game in which they play perfect and one that comes down to the wire and one that they close out. You can't survive in today's NFL if you don't have a pass rush. And I wasn't calling for the Niners necessarily to trade for a star player. A 1 for Trey Hendrickson, then you have to give him a contract extension in a reset year. I can see why the Niners didn't make that move. But could you have given up a 2nd or a 3rd round pick for a young player who you can continue to build with? And here's the other thing, Larry. That player doesn't have to be a rental. That player can be a part of your future. And when you look ahead to 2026, when is Nick Bosa going to come back? When is Mykel Williams going to come back? We have no idea. So you're going to be light on defensive ends and at the very least inexperience at defensive end if you draft somebody in 2026 as well. These draft picks are not guaranteed. I think the Niners whiffed. They stood pat. I think they missed out on an opportunity to do something special this year because as currently constituted and constructed with this roster and with this pass rush, there is now a ceiling on this team. Anything can happen when you get in the dance. Anything can happen in a league of parity. Anything can happen in the NFL. So if you made a trade and your pass rush improved, with Kyle Shanahan coaching the offense, Robert Saleh coaching the defense, you would have an opportunity against anybody in a wide open NFC and a wide open NFL this year. But by not making a move, one player goes down, you're screwed again. And I'll tell you this, we're recording this live on Friday. If Keon White can't play in this game, what are they going to do? What are they going to do at defensive end? Are they going to elevate Andrew Farmer from the practice squad who played D2 ball at lane to try to get after Matthew Stafford with the passing attack that has Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams? Come on now. Don't tell anybody that they can't be frustrated. Fans should be frustrated that the Niners did not make a move because it's a blown opportunity here. How do you think that Trent Williams at 37 feels? How do you think that Christian McCaffrey leading the NFL in touches feels? How do you think that George Kittle toward the end of his prime is feeling that the Niners decided to stand pat? They're probably a little bit frustrated too. And some people will say, well, Chase, they've made trades. They traded for Brian Robinson. They traded for Sky Moore. They traded for Keon White. There's a great saying. Context is really important, right? The Niners were in a spot where they needed to make a move. Those moves outside of Keon White happened before the season. Those moves happened before the litany of injuries that the Niners have suffered. And with Mykel Williams going down, you were in a spot where you needed to make a trade because you needed another body out there. You can't trade a late round pick for a Draymond Jones or an Arden Key or somebody along those lines. They could have. I know it takes 2 to tango, but sweeten the deal a little bit. Give up a mid-round pick for 2026 if you need to. Think about the players who the Niners have drafted in the 3rd round of late. Jake Moody, Cam Latu, Ty Davis-Price, Trey Sermon, no longer on the team. Some people have said, well, Chase, what do you think about Jair Brown, Dominic Pooney, and Upton Stout? Jair Brown in the third round is one of the worst starting safeties in the NFL. Dominic Puni has regressed in year 2. I like Upton Stout as a player, but he's not a world beater right now. He's a good building block. The point here is a trade, you're getting a player who you know who they are. Drafting, you have no idea if that player is going to be able to pan out or not. So you and I are in agreement on this. The Niners should have made a trade, and it's a big swing and miss for this organization, I think.
The funny thing is, the irony of the whole thing is people will be like, if guys like you and I are like, hey, man, they should have done more, they're really doomed. Be like, you got to believe. You got to believe. Well, you know what? Where was this belief from Lynch when he told us in the offseason that they were going to take their lumps this year? I mean, it's almost like they decided what their ceiling was before they played even the first game of the year. I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like they decided that they weren't going to be. I mean, this is a team. All I want to see is a little consistency. When they took this team over, it was like no amount of D-line capital is too much. They were so deep up front in their initial team that they almost had 2 D-lines. They had 2 starting D-lines. Now they're signing Keon White on a Wednesday, and he's their best defensive lineman. They're picking up Cleve Farrell off the street, and he's the only guy that does anything up front.
He's not even on the active roster.
I mean, where has the depth of the defensive line go? Where's the consistency? What has happened to this defensive line that was the deepest in football when they took over? And it's like they can't pick defensive linemen. They can't sign the right defensive lineman. They can't draft the right defensive lineman. They're, CJ West, I liked in the draft. He's not even active. They loved Mikael Williams. He had 1 sack. You could have had other guys that were more productive. Jalen Walker, no. You went all in on Javon Hargrave. I mean, it's like, how to thin out your herd on the defensive line by the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, every year that goes by, their D-line, which is where they wanted to put their money and their assets and where they wanted to be really strong, goes from being a strength to it's not as much of a strength to it's kind of a moderate strength to now it's a freaking weakness. Now it's an overwhelming weakness. So, I mean, it's like, sorry. I mean, and I love Chris as a guy, but where's this line? I mean, show me the buildup of this line. I mean, all they do is just get more and more guys that can't do the job. And it's frustrating to watch. I mean, I want to see a little consistency. They obviously needed more on their defensive line. They didn't get that help. Now, you have people going, you don't believe. It's like, did Lynch believe? Did Shanahan believe? Every time Lynch and Shanahan talked about the trade deadline, every time, even from early in the year, they always were like, yeah, we'll see. And even when Shanahan went on national Sirius XM at the beginning of the year to assess the year, he's like, well, hopefully, we can hang around and maybe find our way into the playoffs. I mean, it was like they had decided how good their team was before they'd played any games.
Yep. And here's the other thing. At 6-3, what do you think Howie Roseman would have done? You think Howie Roseman would have made a trade? Of course he would have. Yeah. Howie Roseman would have made a trade. And a lot of people will say, Chase, stop sucking off the Philadelphia Eagles and comparing the Niners to the Eagles. They've won 2 Super Bowls.
They're the Super Bowl champions. You should be comparing yourself to them.
Yes. If you aspire to be great in a copycat league, you should look at what the best teams are doing. The Eagles have won 2 Super Bowls since 2017, and they have the best general manager in the sport who made 3 trades in 1 week before the deadline. He's made 9 trades since the start of training camp. You know why? Because he's going to exhaust every single avenue in order to improve the football team. But the Niners did not do that. And whether it's player 1 on the roster or 53, Howie Roseman is always going to look to upgrade. And he also knows that when you make a move, it gives the team confidence. It gives the team juice, that the guys upstairs believe in them. And it can really reinvigorate a team that clearly is a little bit down in the dumps with everything that's gone wrong this year, all of the injuries that they've suffered, despite they're still 6-3. And don't tell me that the Niners didn't have picks to give up. 2026, their own first, their own second, a third, a fourth conditional. You can trade those. You can't trade comp picks, right? But you're slotted to have 3 compensatory picks. If you gave up your own fourth rounder, which can become a fifth if Bryce Huff gets 8 sacks, you give up that fourth. Who cares? You still have 3 fourths in the bag. You get a round 7 conditional pick from the New England Patriots. And then in 2027, you have your own first, your own second, your own third, your own fourth, fifth, and 2 sevenths. And you're probably going to get compensatory picks in the 2027 draft as well. That is plenty of ammunition for you to continue to build through the draft. So many people out there who either cover this team or who are a fan of this team, I respect the fandom, and it's always important to remember the word fan is short for fanatic. But the Niners aren't a perfect organization. The Niners can be held to a standard. The Niners can be criticized. What do you think Eddie D would have done if he was running this team at 6-3? He would have made a trade and signed off on it. And honestly, the blame can't just be on John Lynch. Maybe it's Jed York who didn't want John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan to make a trade. That's totally possible. And the reason why Howie makes so many trades for the Eagles is because Jeffrey Lurie says, if you think this can improve our ball club and give us a shot, do what you got to do. And thankfully, the Niners don't have this meddling owner like Jerry Jones, but Jed York may have stepped in and said, it's not our year. You're hosting Super Bowl 60. Try to make it your year at 6-3.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Let's talk about the future a little bit. What is the future at the quarterback position? Orlovsky's talking quarterback controversy. Grant's got a stream going right now. The 49ers could trade Mac Jones or Brock Purdy this offseason. He's going on right now. Everybody loves to be like, there's no controversy. It's like, sorry, control freak. You don't have that kind of, you don't control the situation. And the Niners can say, hey, there is no controversy, but they don't control the situation. Nothing controls this situation except for the performance of these players. You are until you aren't, Jake Moody was going to be the Niners kicker for a long time to come, according to John Lynch in July. By September, he's a Chicago Bear. So much for that, right? So a lot of this talk is just talk, right? The Niners have signed Purdy. I like Purdy. I think Purdy's the better of the two. But there are a lot of Niner fans that think that Jones is the better of the two, that he's got the better arm, and that since he's the cheaper guy, they ought to go with the cheaper guy and trade the expensive guy and build up the team around Mac Jones on a cheaper contract. What's the future of the quarterback position? What's Brock Purdy's future? What's Mac Jones's future? What's the Niners' future? I mean, it's an overwhelming positive to have 2 quarterbacks in their mid-20s that can both process and that you feel like you can win with. To me, this seems like a golden opportunity for the 49ers to use one of these guys to continue to build around the other. But we'll see how they play their hand of cards. How is this going to go? Everybody's insisting there's no controversy. There's no controversy. But the reality is if Mac Jones goes and beats Stafford on Sunday, and the Niners threw Purdy back out there the following week and he lost, right then and there, you would have a huge controversy on your hands because there'd be all kinds of people calling for Mac Jones. That is not my delusion. That is reality. So how do you see it, Chase? I mean, what do you see at quarterback? Is Brock better than Mac? Is Mac better than Brock? Should they keep them both long-term? Should they sell off of one and try to get picks and build around the other? How do you see it?
Well, where would the Niners be here in 2025 without Mac Jones? He signed a 2-year, $8.4 million contract. He is 5-2. And if I told you that he went 5-2 by the middle of November, or he started 7 games, I should say, by the middle of November, a lot of Niner fans going into the year would say, a repeat of 2024 when the Niners went 6-11. But he has played really well. And Dan Orlovsky, you mentioned him when you were teeing me up, had done a Mac Jones quarterback breakdown, and he said that Mac is playing like one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I agree. Now, 5-2. He's done a tremendous job in games where he's had to throw it a lot. I think he's proven to be a really good pocket passer. I think people have cooled on Brock Purdy a little bit just because he's been injured this year. And last year he played just okay, but there was a lot that went wrong and a lot of injuries. I still think Brock Purdy is the Niners guy. But if he comes back at some point this year, he really starts to struggle. That's not a good look on him. And it's not a good look on the Niners that they gave him that huge contract. I mean, can you imagine if the Niners didn't give him that deal and this was the expiring year of his contract, he got hurt and Mac Jones would be playing like this? I think a lot of people would change their tune in going from Brock Purdy is the guy to saying, we got to roll with Mac because he's going to be the more affordable guy. Let Brock Purdy test the waters in free agency to see what he can get. Now, I think that Purdy gives you more as far as an athlete being able to improvise and create plays out of structure. I think behind an average offensive line that can struggle against really good defensive lines, Purdy so often has been able to bail you out. I think that at times he can throw with better touch, accuracy, and anticipation downfield. But Mac Jones throws a better deep ball. He has a stronger arm, sometimes within the pocket. He's a better quarterback. I like his durability. I like his size back there. So they both certainly have strengths, but I do think that Purdy is still the better of the two quarterbacks, but it's a luxury to have a guy like Mac Jones on that contract, so affordable beyond this year as well. If Purdy gets hurt again, you know you have Mac. If Purdy plays poorly, you know you have Mac. The other thing with trading away Purdy, I don't know if there'd be a lot of teams out there who'd be willing to take on that contract of $265 million and $55 million per year. I think that's a little bit too high for a lot of teams out there. Plus, I don't know if you could trade him to a team with a cold weather climate like the Cleveland Browns. It doesn't make sense to trade for a quarterback like Purdy, who's smaller and struggles to grip the ball in poor weather. When you play in Cleveland, you have to play in Baltimore, play in Pittsburgh, play in Cincinnati. And so the pool of teams that you could trade Purdy to would obviously dwindle a little bit as well.
It's interesting. Okay, so somebody said, hey, man, you can get a second-round pick for Mac Jones. I think I'd rather have Mac Jones.
I'd rather have Mac Jones.
So then a second-round pick.
I'd also rather have Jermaine Johnson than a third-round pick right now. You know what I mean?
I've heard people also argue that, that Brock Purdy, because of his contract, is not going to have a lot of value. Grant's discussing this right now. Should the Niners could trade Mac Jones or Brock Purdy this offseason. Do you agree with that? And what would you say, and this is, we're just guessing here, but what would you say the price tag would be for Purdy? What do you think the price tag would be for Jones?
Man,
it's hard to speculate on these things.
It's kind of
the eye of the beholder too. It's like, well, wait a second. If there's some one general manager or some one coach, somebody who's empowered, who really thinks, has this conviction that Brock's super special or that Jones is super special, you never know. And if you don't have a quarterback, it's like you're desperate in this league.
Yeah, I'd say Purdy played elite in 2022. Purdy played elite in 2023. He was top 5 in MVP voting, and in recent memory, he had one of the most efficient quarterback seasons that we've seen. He was incredible in 2023. But he also had a semblance of playmakers that was probably the best collection of playmakers around him in the National Football League. In 2024, when those playmakers went away, that's when he struggled a little bit. I think another concern from GMs with Purdy, the inability to throw and play in bad weather, but also the injuries, right? 2022, elbow. 2024, shoulder. 2025, toe. And so I think that damages his value a little bit. It's been a little while since he's played great football. At times in 2024, he was good, but he was also very turnover prone and tried to be the hero late in games and made a lot of mistakes with the football. When you think back to what he did at Iowa State, I watched a lot of Brock Purdy. He was a gunslinger. He turned it over a lot. Is that the quarterback who he is? Or in 2023, did he prove otherwise? Or did he just have one outlier, very efficient season? So I think Purdy would be worth like a second-round pick because of the contract. honestly, with Mac Jones, because of his contract, I think he might be worth a second-round pick as well, which sounds crazy. But when you think about those factors, which I do think are important, I think both those quarterbacks are worth a second. I'm not trading either of them. Mac Jones has saved the Niners season this year, and you see why Kyle Shanahan loved him in the pre-draft, right? He looks like a perfect fit in Kyle Shanahan's system. And so I'm holding on to him this year, great value. Holding on to him next year, great value. And you know that you have a backup plan if anything goes wrong with Purdy or if he continues to struggle. And I think that if Mac Jones were to play well for the Niners next year and you wanted to give him a contract extension, could you get him at a deal like what Daniel Jones got, like what Sam Darnold got, Baker Mayfield, where it's between $35 and $40 million? Potentially.
Let's go speed round here at the end. First of all, Kyle Shanahan said yesterday they'll make a decision today after practice on if Brock will suit up against the Rams. What do you think? You think Brock winds up suiting up? I think we've got the indication that Jones spoke yesterday that Jones is going to start this game. But do you think they've talked about, hey, maybe Brock will be the backup in some of these games? I think that makes sense in the playoffs or in a gotta win it playoff situation. I don't know that makes sense outside of that.
Yeah.
As Brock being number 2, as opposed to just either you're starting or you're inactive.
Here's the thing. He's literally been day-to-day for a month. He's been day-to-day for a month. He's practicing. He has his shoulder pads on. He's got his helmet on. He's throwing in practice. He's starting to do a little bit more, but he's been day-to-day for a month because the turf toe, it's a tricky, complex injury, and the risk of re-aggravation is very high. So maybe he suits up as the backup, but the Niners have to be very confident that if Mac Jones were to get hurt and he got banged up in the first game against the Rams because that defensive line got after him, that he's going to be ready to go, that he won't re-injure that toe. And I don't think the Niners know that.
What's your read on Ayuk? Is Ayuk coming back?
I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play the rest of the year. I really wouldn't.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to play this year.
I mean,
I thought he'd play around Thanksgiving, but now I'm starting to think no.
Yeah. I mean, for Kyle Shanahan to say, we think there's a chance he could play this year, that's not good. We are now about 13 months removed from that injury. I never expected him to come back in like 9 to 10 months like other people with ACL tears because he tore 3 ligaments in his knee. It was as bad of an injury as you can suffer. So the Niners want to make sure that he's reaching some of these GPS metrics that he was able to hit pre-injury and all that stuff. They obviously also don't want him to get hurt for themselves or if he has any trade value. Ayuk probably is being very conservative as well, but it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't play this year and just has one of those medical redshirt seasons.
What's his future with the team? Does he have one, or do you think he's traded?
I'd like for him to have a future because I'm intrigued at the thought of a healthy Ayuk, a healthy Pearsall if he can ever stay healthy, and Kendrick Bourne is a cheap option. Demarcus Robinson under contract next year. Jordan Watkins is a speed threat. Jacob Cowling, who's now re-injured his hamstring 3 times, which is crazy. Classic Niners strength and conditioning department. I do like his ability as a football player. And then the draft is always rich with wide receivers. So I'd like to see what IU can do, especially under the contract that the Niners signed him to, because in the 2 years prior to that injury in 2022 and in 2023, he was a top 10 wideout. The guy's a dog as a run blocker as well. Really like the way that he plays the game. Now, obviously, a lot of Niner fans have cooled on him with the way that he handled the contract, and I didn't love that either. But he's a really special player when healthy. But if he gets dealt, that wouldn't surprise me either.
JJ, you think he's here next year?
No, he's gone.
What do you make of Pearsall not able to get out there? This thing has lingered. It really has. I mean, a lot longer than I thought. I mean, yeah, he banged his knee on the sideline. I thought it was a bone bruise. I thought, maybe he'll miss a game. He's been out for a month.
Yeah, well, he had that knee injury going into that game, and then he injured his knee as he hit it on the grass, and then that probably made the injury worse. The thing with the PCL, it helps stabilize the knee. As a wide receiver, if your knee isn't stabilized, that thing can give out at any moment. And it's so funny. People will call me a Ricky Pearsall hater when I point out his injury history. And they're like, Chase, he got shot. What do you expect? Hold on. Before the gunshot, he hurt his shoulder and he hurt his hamstring. Prior to this year, he hurt his hamstring and now his knee. That is 4 injuries, not mentioning the gunshot, that he has suffered in 2 seasons with the 49ers. Special when on the field, great route runner, slick and slippery, great hands, very explosive, can make plays downfield. Almost all of his catches were going for first downs, but can the guy stay healthy? His injury history, very concerning with the Niners. He was durable in college at Arizona State and at Florida, but with the Niners, he hasn't been able to stay healthy for a long time. Again, not mentioning the gunshot.
The Niners put this out. This is kind of funny. To show this real quick before we wrap up. This is pretty good. 49ers having a little fun in the locker room. Here we go.
What do you call a bear with no teeth?
A bear?
Yeah, with no teeth. A gummy bear. How does the moon cut his hair?
Eclipse.
Bro, he knows this, bro. What? Where you going? Where you going? Hey, what do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. What did 50 Cent do when he was hungry? Is this a joke? 58. What do you call a fake noodle?
A fake noodle?
An imposter.
That laugh is killing me.
What do you call a bear with no teeth?
A bear with no teeth?
A gummy bear.
That's good culture right there, and that's what Kendrick Bourne brings you. And you asked me, is Jawan Jennings going to return next year? I don't think so, because Bourne was JJ before JJ, and I think Bourne next year, a lot more affordable than Jawan Jennings. And this year he's been better than Jawan Jennings.
Is Robert Saleh back next year?
I hope so, man. I mean, what he's been able to do with all of these injuries, all of these young players, they are top 10 in points per game allowed. They have a top 10 red zone defense. They've been a true bend but do not break unit. He's done great. I think he's going to get chances to get a head coaching job. The only thing it's going to come down to, teams with head coaching openings, do they go with an offensive mind to pair with a young quarterback, or do they go defensive mind? The risk with going with the defensive mind is that you're always cycling through offensive coordinators. But the guy's a baller, and right when he was fired by the Jets, I said, bring him in, and I was so happy that they brought him back, and you're seeing it this year.
All right. Last thought. D. Winters is banged up. Or do you think we're going to eventually see Nick Martin? I got to think that I would love to see Robert Saleh put Nick Martin on the field in some kind of sub package and run him at the quarterback on third downs 3 or 4 times. I'm not talking about 50 snaps. I'm talking about this guy is fast and athletic, and you have no difference maker pass rushers. What makes a pass rusher a difference maker? It's that speed that those guys have off the edge. This guy's got that 4 or 5 speed. Now, granted, he's an inside linebacker. He's not an edge rusher. But put him on the field and send him at the quarterback. If these guys are really defensive geniuses, then utilize your talents. You have a super uber athletic 4.53 linebacker that you took in the 3rd round that you can't quite get on the field. I mean, fine, he's not refined. Send him at the quarterback. I think he had like 10 sacks in his career at Oak State. Run this guy at the quarterback.
Yeah.
Is that make sense? Or
it makes total sense. You know who Nick Martin reminds me of?
Who's that?
Early in his career?
Bobby Wagner?
I was
so Bobby Wagner.
Over pursues plays.
Yeah.
Very aggressive. Sometimes can't throttle down. You know what D. Winters, though, did when he was younger that Nick Martin did in the preseason? A lot of wow plays. And you would say, wow, the ability is certainly there. I'll say this, too. In that Raiders preseason game, he definitely missed on some plays, but he was used as a blitzer. He made a great tackle in the flat. He had a pass breakup down the seam that was a really good play. The ability is there. He didn't play a lot last year because of that knee, and I think he's a little bit raw. But look, you're playing all these young guys. You didn't make a trade because you want to have this youth get a lot of experience. Put him out there. What's there to lose? you got to see what he can do compared to a guy like Luke Gifford, who's a special teamer. See what Nick Martin can do. And to your point, use him as a pass rusher. They're dialing up a lot of blitzes with D Winters, with Tatum Bethune. Do the same with Nick Martin because I think that he can impact the game.
Yeah, no question. All right, it is time for our Habas Law Supers, brought to us by Habas Law. Today's show is sponsored by Habas Law. Omar Habas and his son Tarek have been standing up for people in Northern California for a long time. They're great lawyers. They're official partners of the Giants, the Earthquakes, the Sharks, and more. If you need someone in your corner, call the law firm that insurance companies hope you never call, and that's Habas Law. They will fight to make it right. Visit them on the web at habaslaw.com, HABBAS law.com. They're great guys, and we appreciate Habas Law for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. We got 3 supers in the house. We got Joseph Ernberg. I think this team is in dire need of regime change. I mean, I love Ernberg and I love that negativity, but you know what? Come on, really? Regime change? You're going to chase out Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. All I got to say is I don't think they're perfect, but I need to know. I'll say it. I've said this many times. I'll say it again. Anybody with a hammer can demo my kitchen, but it takes a contractor with skill to rebuild it. Anybody can say fire this guy, but it takes a football person to be able to say and replace him with this GM and this head coach, and here's why they'll be better. So I'm not one of these people that, like, if you speak bad about the organization, you're banished from my channel. No, I welcome it. It's free and open dialogue. And if that Ernberg, I love you, brother. If that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. But I don't share that opinion that I would have regime change. What I would do is I would go get find out who the really sharpest young college scouting director is. Take that person, make them the general manager, make John Lynch the president, and keep rolling. That's all I would do.
Shanahan's a coach of the year. So, yeah.
Right. Come on. Ernberg in the house has this one. He says, trade both. Maple Missile is about to light it up.
Curtis Rourke, baby.
Curtis Rourke, Maple Missile. Could you imagine if this is all about Curtis Rourke and he's just like some awesome player and Purdy and Jones? It's like, oh, those guys. It's the Rourke show. Tommy Huxley says, Larry fears Harrison. What does that say? Harrison movie, The Thicker Kicker. Oh, that's right. Or Harrison Mavis, The Thicker Kicker. The Rams have a new kicker. Josh Carty gets one blocked every week. They said enough with that. They're bringing in a guy that they're calling the Thicker Kicker. Can you tell us anything about the Thicker Kicker? I
didn't know about this. Carty has a leg, but yeah, blocked field goals were a problem.
Let's see if maybe I can
great
find
nickname.
Yeah, seriously, great nickname. I don't know if I can find the picture of him, but they do have a picture of this guy, and he is kind of a fat kicker. And by the way, just so you know that the Niners aren't the only team that gets guys who are hurt. DeForest Buckner placed on IR today with a neck injury by the Colts. So that is this league. You add, you subtract, you add. Guys get hurt. Tucker Kraft done for the year. Ed Oliver put on IR. DeForest Buckner put on IR. You got to roll with it, and that's why you got to keep going. And that's why I was hoping they'd get some help up front. They didn't, and now we shall see what it means going forward. Chase, what do you got cooking the rest of the week?
Yeah, plenty of content to come in the lead up to that Niners-Rams game, and then we'll be live for another watch party on the 49ers Report on Sunday. So hope to see all of you there.
Are you guys still shotgunning beers in the live stream, in the live reports, or is
some
that just
here
like
and there? But I'm training for a High Rocks competition here in a couple of weeks,
Nice.
So I really haven't been drinking that much outside of just game days. So we still have fun, we still bring the energy. Getting a little bit older now, the recovery isn't the same, so not as many shotguns. But if somebody sends in a big time super chat, sometimes we got to get down.
There you go. Is there a fridge on, in the studio there where you guys tape?
Right by the studio. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. We just got a super. Get us a tall can in
That's
here.
how it goes. That's how it goes sometimes.
You know what? You're doing God's work.